Hi everybody, Rad Mom here. Welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be discussing the gender critical movement. Is it really a feminist movement? Is feminism even really possible in this misogynist patriarchal world of ours? So we have a new guest today on the Rad Mom channel who calls himself Vera Wild, which is corny as all get out, isn't it?
I am more than anything into media analysis and criticism.
It's very strange to me because this fella actually, I don't give a shit what you call yourself. I will call you by whatever name you want. He doesn't claim to be a woman. He claims to be gender fluid, which is even more ridiculous because no one's talking about being sex fluid, and female is not a gender. So what are we doing? But what he does is that he has two channels at least. I don't really have the time to properly internet stalk anyone who we meet in these videos, so maybe you know more about this guy than I do, but on he's friends with Jessie Gender, which is fun. I've been recommended his Council of Geeks videos, I think, through that avenue before. And I paid it no mind because, woke geekery. I grew up with that shit. He has another channel where he presents very feminine.
Clarification, not a trans woman, gender fluid.
And it's really funny because he lands somewhere between Mrs. Doubtfire and Paul Harvey in his presentation here. He has some very strong words to say about the gender critical movement. Is it really a movement? Is it really feminism? Let's see if this fellow who calls himself Vera has any good insights for us on that.
Hey there, folks. A bit of an impromptu video, bit of an unplanned one.
For a start, I do not believe that. Just everything about this is so ridiculously practiced, and the makeup and the hair are just so, and frankly, I don't think anything this person does is impromptu. Ever.
I have some other stuff that I've planned on, actually some stuff that I've already shot that I'm looking forward to that'll be a little bit more fun.
Unlike he's pressing his cleavage at the camera. It's just distasteful. And he's so much a dude. It's confusing as well. So, please stop.
I'm not gonna sit by and let this happen unremarked, because while I don't like talking about the gender critical movement at all, but I especially don't like to focus on them excessively because it's draining and exhausting and nobody should be giving them attention.
And we've already started with a very strong language in both directions, by the way. It's like yellow journalism level of loaded language.
Sometimes there are moments where you realize, okay, people need to realize this.
Sometimes there are moments when you see an example of a narrative you want to push and you jump on it.
For those of you unaware, the gender critical movement is the current rebranding of TERFs. They did take ownership of that phrase initially, but then when there started to be a taint on it, they claimed it was a slur and have opted for gender critical.
Actually, yeah, the term TERF was apparently coined by feminists originally. And then it was kind of turned into basically the equivalent of witch. You see what I mean? And, for a while, TERF was basically the mean way of saying gender critical. At least that was the part that I saw. I have really stepped back from stuff like Twitter, which, as you'll see, is basically the ground of his entire argument here.
I, for one, am curious as to what the next rebrand is going to be, because people are realizing gender critical is the exact same thing and toxic for the exact same reasons. So they're going to have to rebrand eventually again, but we'll see.
And it really reminds me more of the way that names for ethnic groups have evolved over the decades, because the old term now sounds racist. Is that because the groups who were dubbed that tainted it?
Right now, gender critical is still the term. Now, gender critical movement is a purportedly feminist movement railing against the rights or the presumed expansion of rights of trans people, specifically trans women. And while they will take attention to trans men, it's generally in the sense of these people have been brainwashed and they're just butch lesbians. So it is infantilizing and diminishing and dismissing of trans men.
It is none of those things. It is not infantilizing, diminishing, or dismissing to have greater experience and knowledge in something than another person and act upon that. Sometimes you just know more about something. You don't even need to be an expert in that thing. Sometimes you just are twice somebody's age, for Christ's sake.
And treating trans women as predatory.
And I've said this before, trans women are inherently problematic because pretending to be a woman to yourself or other people so you can get into female-only spaces is problematic behavior. Like, by definition.
While they are far from the only people coming after us.
They're far from the only people coming after you. Right. Who else is coming after you? You have the federal governments of various Western countries literally pushing legislation in favor of what you want. I just don't know of any other social group who can say that right now.
They are an interesting subset of those people who are targeting the trans community because they claim to do so in the name of protecting women's rights and in the name of feminism.
There actually are people who disagree with your position from a position of women's rights. We do exist. Right here.
Now, this is different than just purporting that this is somehow an abomination or that we're demonic or that we're groomers, though they will frequently claim we are groomers.
Thank you for making that distinction, I guess. You're right. I'm not a conservative nutcase. In the case of somebody like Jamie Dodger, who I've covered a few times on the channel, yeah, it's real weird and suspicious when somebody who has no children, is not a teacher, and has no real personal or professional reason to be so, is like preoccupied with the doings of children.
But their lens is not specifically through the framing of protect the children, which is more the general amorphous mass that is the right. That's sort of their main angle. Whereas the gender critical movement is much more focused primarily on women.
Thank you for distinguishing between gender critical people and the right, broadly. I've only been trying to do that for years.
And women's rights and how trans women are impeding on women's rights either by the things that they are asking for recognition or just by existing at all.
The problem is that they don't exist at all. There's no such thing as somebody who was mysteriously born in the wrong body somehow. That does not happen.
So here's the thing I wanted to bring attention to in case you missed it. I don't recommend hanging out a ton on Twitter. I actually don't do it nearly as much as some people seem to assume I do, but I am on there.
I get the feeling from this that he spends like kind of a lot of time on Twitter. Am I alone in that?
It's a cesspool. But every now and then, something that's trending on Twitter can open your eyes to something. And I don't mean in that like, oh, this trend made me realize. I was like, no, the fact that it's trending brought my eyes to it. And I went, oh, okay. If you're not familiar with the individual Graham Linehan, otherwise known as Glinner on Twitter, he is probably the most prominent male gender critical or, sort of figure within that movement.
Does it count as misogynistic that Graham Linehan, the most famous man in the movement, is his first example? Does that count as misogynistic? I mean, he is a really good example and a really tragic, sad sack at the moment, apparently. I know even less about this than you do, Vera. So I can't say exactly how closely related that is to his gender critical activism. I will say one thing about divorce, which is that you don't know the whole story and neither do I.
I'm not going to go through the whole thing with him, but short version, he used to be well known for creating a number of British series. He has not actually done any writing since 2017. So far as I can tell, he only lives on Twitter and on podcasts to complain about trans women.
That might be called retirement. Most of those television shows you mentioned he's known for are from the 90s, man.
to the point that it actually impacted his home life. And while I refuse to dig into it enough to find this for certain, I've certainly seen claims that his level of bigotry was part of what drove his divorce.
I'm living in a flat now because eventually the pressure of all this drove my wife and I apart.
Like, being transphobic seems to have basically become this guy's entire life.
Or the man made his living in satire and has been on a crusade against Orwellian doublethink that makes such a thing impossible. And the Orwellians won.
And there was an exchange that happened on Twitter where he quote tweeted someone who brought up having a hormonal condition, and as a result, she has more body hair than is normal, has a thinning hairline. And his response was to say, look, you're just a man. We know you're just a man. Yeah, this is actually a really big problem and worth highlighting.
I think the only problem with this highlights is, perhaps Graham Linehan's increasing lack of attention span. The man is going through a divorce, apparently. What is your point?
Now, the condition that this person had, I believe specifically she had PCOD, which is also very similar to PCOS. Now, those aren't the exact same condition, but they're very, very, very similar. It's polycystic ovarian disease and polycystic ovary syndrome. So they are very connected, they're very similar, and they have a lot of crossover in terms of symptoms. And those symptoms can include excessive body hair, including facial hair, changes in weight, irregular periods.
And I've left this in, but I'm actually going to qualify PCOD in this little science lesson as a non sequitur. Because I don't think Graham Linehan actually noticed that part. And I think that is your point. So we can just disregard the whole science lesson about what polycystic ovarian disease is. Despite the fact that you're never actually saying what it is. It cysts on your ovaries, for fuck's sake. And it's extremely painful. So I'm going to leave this in, despite the fact that I think it is totally irrelevant, because I think it demonstrates the pretentious prick that you are.
Thinning hair, even to the point of mirroring male pattern baldness, and high testosterone levels. So, to be clear, PCOS is a condition that is related to your hormone balance and your ovaries in particular. So, the only people who get it are people with ovaries.
Women. Only women have ovaries.
Now, of course, trans men can have this condition. Non-binary people can have this condition. Anyone with ovaries can have this condition. I am going to filter this conversation primarily through the lens of cisgender women, i.e. women who identify as the gender they were assigned at birth.
AKA the vast majority of females on this planet, right? Gee, thanks.
So, born, it's a girl, and they identified as a woman for their entire life. I'm going to focus on that.
You guys, the white man gave us permission to center ourselves in our own conversation. At last, our lives may begin.
I'm going to focus on that because it's that element that really gives away the game of what is going on and what this reveals. So, understand that this person on Twitter, and indeed the majority of people with PCOS or PCOD, are cisgender women. They have been women for their whole lives, and he just said he will disregard them and based off what he believes he sees, which again can include thinning hair, body hair, and they frankly do have more testosterone, but they're still women.
Yes, they are, and I don't think Graham Linehan would even necessarily argue with that. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he probably didn't read this very closely. Because, yeah, he missed the mark pretty widely. What exactly does this demonstrate aside from the fact that Graham Linehan is clearly preoccupied at the moment?
But especially from the point of view of gender criticals who are hard focused on the idea that what you were assigned at birth is what you are, period and forever. So from their view, these are women. They can't be anything else.
That's right, because only someone with ovaries can have polycystic ovarian syndrome or disease. And only women have ovaries, yes. Ipso facto, womanhood. I'm really sorry if that basic biological logic doesn't suit you. Neither does that top, really.
But he immediately started to refer to her as a man. The thing is, I know I'm zeroing in on this one particular incident, but it's illustrative of something that is happening. There's a term within the trans community called transvestigators. People who, well, they love to just try and look for the clues that someone who claims and identifies as a cisgender person, that they're somehow secretly transgender. And the way this usually manifests is by calling cis women men because they don't match a certain standard of beauty.
So we've all been made extremely aware of gender and its role in society and gender stereotypes and what exactly it is that they mean to us in our personal lives on a daily basis. Now you can find examples of people going around and enforcing all the symbolism that we have unconsciously absorbed from our culture our entire lives. What a shock.
Because they have narrow hips, because they have more body hair, because they have a gender build that is not considered as feminism, because they have thinning hair on their head, they will be called men.
Anxious people in an environment where all of these norms are in the process of being dismantled. They should begin unconsciously enforcing them on the world around them to try and make themselves feel better. I don't know. Does that mean that any one of those people doesn't actually support the liberation of women? Does internalized misogyny mean you can't be a feminist?
Another somewhat recent incident that I think ties into this actually happened with Erin Dark. And this is Daniel Radcliffe's, I believe they're engaged? I don't know the exact relationship. Daniel Radcliffe's partner, who is currently pregnant with their child. And there was a thing on Twitter, which I did jump in on and laugh at, but she was implied to be a man by a gender-critical person based off two things: her appearance and the fact that Daniel Radcliffe is supportive of trans people, vocally. Immediately implying that this woman is a man. Now, so far as I'm aware, Erin Dark does not have PCOS or PCOD, but both of these things connected, they help make the point that the gender critical movement, the TERF movement, whatever you wish to call it, is not and has never been a feminist movement.
You're seriously going to sit here and tell us that the gender critical movement has never been a feminist movement because of a couple of mean tweets? Dude, this connection was made by you.
No, I'm not a feminist. I'm not a feminist.
Aww, it's almost as if Kelly J. Keene doesn't call herself a gender critical person. She's a femalist because she's starting her own movement, which you can go watch her channel about. Way to take somebody completely out of context there, Vera.
Because feminism is and must be about making a better world, protecting the rights of, defending and standing up for all women. That's what feminism is.
Agreed. And trans women do not exist because no one is magically born in the wrong fucking body. So yeah, all women. Agreed.
Does it often fall short? In certain instances, implementations, yeah. There's a reason white feminism gets a lot of criticism.
But white male feminism is perfectly fine.
But the purpose of feminism is to lift up all women. And even if you're going to say, well, trans women aren't women, so they don't count, which you're wrong, but for the moment, let's go with that.
Say it again there, Vera.
Okay. But they're throwing aside cis women.
Throwing them aside? Oh my god, this is over a couple of mean tweets.
They're throwing aside women, assigned female at birth, lived as women their whole lives, are women. They have ovaries. But you will discard them as men because it is seen as either acceptable collateral damage, or in the case of someone like Erin Dark, if you're not on their side, they will find a reason to dismiss you as a man.
Yeah, some people are petty, especially on Twitter, which you yourself said earlier in this video is a what now?
It's a cesspool.
That leads one to suspect that perhaps you may have cherry-picked these examples to support an already existing hypothesis.
They will rob someone of their womanhood, not just trans women. or trans people, because again, clarification, not a trans woman, gender fluid.
Yeah, you're just pretending to be a woman right now. Because lest we forget on your other channel, you look like this.
The way that I go about what I do is pretty much to tell you my views on a thing and do my best to explain why I have them, but I'm generally not trying to present something as this is the absolute factual truth.
But they will remove the right to femininity, the ability to claim womanhood.
Through mean tweets? God damn, these women are powerful. Why in the world are they wasting their time on Twitter?
From not only trans women, but any woman who disagrees with them or does not match their standard of beauty and what they think a woman is supposed to look like.
That's right, the gender criticals are coming for you too.
They don't care if someone has a medical condition that makes them, in the eyes of these people, look more manly. They don't care about them. They don't care about butch lesbians making a choice to appear more masculine, but who are still very much women and own the label of woman. They don't care if those people are excluded because they look mannish. They don't care.
That's 5 repetitions of the phrase, they don't care. I don't know if he's doing this shit on purpose, but that verbal trick is so fucking obvious. I feel like he's just beating us over the head with this.
This is not about feminism. This is not about defending, protecting all women. This is about gatekeeping womanhood.
Yeah. To me, they seem to be one and the same. And folks like you are the ones who started this whole argument in the first fucking place. Because used to us, we didn't have to worry about protecting womanhood as a thing. That used to be the one thing nobody could take away from us. And then y'all found a way. It's kind of amazing.
And it starts with excluding trans women. But oh, how quickly they find reasons to discard anyone else they don't like.
So you're gonna really argue that a couple of snarky, glib examples from the cesspool of Twitter, X, whatever, Twitter, this constitutes this level of paranoia. They're coming for you. That's what you're implying here. And if anything, these people are demonstrating the paranoia that results from the destruction of the social norms, which you yourself are perpetuating right this very second.
Or anyone else who doesn't fit their view of what a woman is. And it goes beyond that even. Because with current changes in some sports organizations to testing for testosterone levels, which is, again, in theory supposed to weed out trans people, there are cisgender athletes who are going to be excluded because they have a condition that gives them a higher testosterone level than is standard for women.
And now we're on to women's sports. Somehow, look, they wouldn't be testing for testosterone levels in women's fucking sports in the first place if it had not become an issue. This was not an issue for decades. In most instances, they didn't do testosterone testing in women's sports. That's a weird idea, really. If there are women out there who are suffering because of this, whose fucking fault is that?
And before anybody goes into that, well, that gives them an advantage. First of all, that's heavily disputed. Second of all, even if that's true, so what? Again, we're not talking trans women right now. We're talking about cisgender women with higher testosterone levels. If that gives them a natural advantage, so what? Isn't the point of sport to allow people with a natural inclination, with a natural ability to perfect themselves and raise themselves to the highest level that they can attain? Isn't that the point? Because if it's not, then what are we even doing?
That's a question a lot of people have been asking ourselves lately. That's literally the problem. You just described it, but like you don't get to use that for your argument. No. We're trying to shelter this preserve for a female skill level that's been established.
The idea of removing a cisgender woman's ability to compete in a sport because her testosterone level is too high, then you are gatekeeping what a woman is.
Yes. Who was it that even raised this issue in the first place? Who was it that decided to try and decouple sex from gender, the social role, and be like, oh yeah, no, I just like feel like I'm the other social role inside. Now give me surgery to make me like the opposite sex. Who started this? Whose fucking fault is this?
Because they're not going to suddenly let these athletes start competing in the men's division. And they aren't asking to, and they don't want to.
Sir, why are you yelling?
This started as an attack on trans women. But it's about gatekeeping womanhood.
Ooh, the scary gender criticals are coming for you and your womanhood. Like, okay.
And they will exclude an increasing number of cis women.
We're like assigning a whole lot of authority to a couple of snarky tweets that you personally have collected. And again, this is the definition of a biased pool that you've drawn from. So, congratulations, you pulled up something disgusting from a cesspool. And you're literally sitting here and trying to argue for us that this demonstrates somehow that the entire gender critical movement cannot and never has been a feminist movement, not for a single second. I have it on pretty good authority that that's not true.
Either because they are in a minority because of conditions they have and they are considered collateral damage, or because they don't fit a certain standard of appearance, or because gender critical people just don't like them and will simply lie and imply that they are men. That is what they will do. That is what they are doing. Whatever it is you think about the gender critical movement, at the very least, will you please recognize that it's not a feminist movement?
No. Whatever it is you think about the gender critical movement, will you please stop with the get up? Please, like it's so distracting and creepy and weird. Like I hate to criticize somebody's appearance, but
even if you find yourself leaning into some kind of support for them, which if you're this far into the video, I can't imagine you do.
And that's why you'll never see me coming. No, I'm not going to admit that because I don't think you've done anything here to demonstrate a damn thing other than what you said at the beginning, which we all already knew, which is that Twitter sucks and people are snotty there. How on earth you can draw any conclusion from a couple of fucking tweets about anything? I don't know. And then you randomly brought in sports, which neither of those tweets actually mentioned. So this really just exposes how this is just a game of connect the dots that you've played for us today. So that sure was fun, right? Wow.
But if on the off chance they're making the active decision to either target or at least cause passive harm to women, and they know what's happening and they don't care, or they want it.
First of all, I don't know that you're in a great position to be talking about what women want. Secondly, you're really stretching these snarky tweets into a whole movement of hypocrites who secretly want women to get hurt and don't care if it happens. Well, I care if it happens, but it does happen all over the world every day, and there isn't a damn thing I can do to stop it, and that kind of sometimes keeps me up at night. Now that you mention it, thanks for bringing it up. Maybe we should talk about that sometime. Oh wait, no, that would actually be feminism.
It's not a feminist movement. It can't be.
The gender critical movement cannot be feminist. Because you found a couple of snarky tweets. This video is almost 16 minutes long.
I just needed to get that out there because it's not that often that I get such a clean example to be able to highlight something that I can try and explain.
Are you sure you're seeing a pattern then? And not just, a little bit of confirmation bias going on? Perhaps?
But sometimes they illustrate it better than I ever could. And they did it with this.
And now you know the rest of the story.
What is this? Listening to basically like this voice of a mid-level sports announcer come out of that face. It's uncanny valley level of weird. Are you doing this on purpose? Like it's like you're trying to confuse us. That's what predators do.
Well, that was not fun. I don't know what that was, but that was a thing.
That was you stitching together some seriously thick bullshit from a very thin thread. Bravo, sir. Bravo.
Whatever your thoughts are on that, I hope that you will share them respectfully. And more than anything, I hope that you remember that you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved.
Okay, I just left this in because it is so damn creepy. Is this what he says to himself in the mirror when he's putting on his makeup? These weird affirmations with like the intents. I don't know, it's so creepy to me. Oh my god, and it's not even done. The creep factor is not even over. Are you ready?
Take care out there.
Ooh, it makes me want to apologize for every time I've ever done that on camera. Thank you so much for sitting through that weirdness with me. I wanted to address this because this guy is totally trespassing in my personal territory, not Twitter, but gender critical stuff. I used to move in those circles for a long time. I don't necessarily use that title anymore, but I know a lot of people who do. And I have a feeling he doesn't. And I'm kind of hitting at softballs today, admittedly. But this guy wigs me out. I'd only ever seen him in his cameos in a couple of Jesse Genders videos. And I found him extremely grating. So I did not go and look him up. One of these actually wandered across my feed the other day. And I thought, what the hell? I know that guy. Let's see what he has to say. And well, apparently no person identifying with the gender critical label has ever done a feminist thing ever, because Graham Linehan was rude on Twitter. You heard it here second. Thanks so much for joining me today. I have been Rad Mom. Come back at the top of the hour for the live streaming discussion where we can, I don't know, poke more fun at this guy. He just seems so eminently mockable to me, and we'll have a good time. And we're trying it midweek this week. Just as a little experiment. We're going to see what happens. So hopefully I'll see you there. Thanks a lot. Bye.